Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh.
And your Daddy Reg.
Daddy Reg. We are grateful to have you once again. We're super happy to have you. And, well, let's get real. Politics suck. But we're happy to be here to give you some levity to all the things that are going on, say, in this beautiful province of ours of Nova Scotia, on the stupendous country we call Canada, and everything that happens abroad. We are happy to bring you the news of what's happened the past week. We're stoked to have you. We're talking today on people not filing their taxes, which is starting to increase. Provinces not want to file their taxes, and then as well as farmers saying screw you because too many taxes. All things revolve around taxes today. We're excited to get into this. Reg, how you feeling, big dog?
I'm feeling good. I opened up with acknowledging that I'm a dad and also that I'm older now. I had a birthday on the weekend and turned the ripe old age of 33. So
hey-o.
I know. Had a good time though. I had a lot of good people out for brunch, yourself included.
Oh, I'm one of the good people.
You're one of the good people.
Let's go.
And I went out for a ride on my motorcycle because it was +8 and beautiful. And I know you're supposed to only ride when it's like +10 and above. I pushed it a little bit. I couldn't wait. It was good. Got out in my garden and then played some hockey. And then when I got to the hockey rink, they had a like birthday hat that said birthday boy on it that I stuck on my helmet. And there was another guy, he had a birthday right around mine. And he also had a helmet with a hat on it as well. So it was pretty good, and they gave us little shots there for good luck.
That's awesome, dude.
So it was good. It was a good weekend.
Good, man. Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you made the most of your birthday festivities. For myself, I'm going to give a good old shout out to our number one fan of this show, my father. Had a tough week last week. Landed himself in the hospital, having some serious heart issues, and going to be getting some serious surgery on that here fairly soon. And so we just are going to ask for some T's and P's from the Elevate community to really, get him through this time. We all love you. And it was funny because Reg is a great person. And coming off the great weekend that he had, he's like, I know you're going through a lot with your family and stuff. We don't have to do a show tonight. And I said, my dad would kill me if we decide not to do a show on his account. And plus, we need to, he's been spending a lot of time in the hospital, so he needs at least 90 minutes of edutainment to get him through. And this one goes out to you, big dog. Dad, we're going hard on this one for you. We're excited to get into this. So first off, the one that we all cared about, this was the biggest event of the century. The Oscars happened last night.
I was going to say, what is this ludicrous that you're going to spill at me?
Dude,
I knew it was going to be something.
Let's get real. The Oscars had the cultural relevance of the South Calgary Real Estate Association Awards last night. That's about how important it was. And the only reason I watched it is because my wife loves it. So it was really funny to kind of watch it, knowing how bad their views are doing, how bad their ratings are in the tank. It really did feel like it was like a small group of people, and I was kind of getting a peer into like how they view themselves. It felt, as I said as a joke, but it's genuinely how I felt. I felt like I was just kind of watching some like random ceremony of people I don't have any connection to, nor do I care about, pat themselves on the back in the industry. It's literally how it feels. So That was I will admit, this is gonna be funny coming from me. Presentation of the night, performance of the night. Ryan Gosling. I'm the Ken music song. I like, dude, that was pretty tight. Dude, it was pretty tight. I enjoyed it.
I only caught like just a moment of it on the radio this morning when I was driving into work because my phone was dead, so I couldn't listen to Spotify. But they were like, Robert Downey Jr. got an Oscar, first time ever. And I was like, oh, good for you. And then they're like, and on to the weather and sports. I was like, perfect. That's all I needed.
Straight up. That's really the only part I think it was cool of the night too, was like seeing Robert Downey Jr. get his applause. And then, Jimmy Kimmel, worst MC ever. This guy sold the soul of the machine. I can't stand the guy. But it was interesting how he ended the night reading a truth from Donald Trump from Truth Social.
I did hear about that.
And I'm like, you guys hate this man so much, yet you keep bringing him up.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. And not only did you see his tweet, you actually went to his platform that is barely being used by anybody to make sure you found out if he was saying anything about you. Seems like a very toxic ex, if you ask me.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, why did he go to Truth Social in the middle of the Oscars while he was supposedly like presenting to then go read Donald Trump tweets? It's like, it's ridiculous.
Dude, it is ridiculous. And that's all I had to think about that. It was interesting kind of seeing it. I think it personally is interesting to see the demise and downfall of once a heavily respected institution. Just literally no one cares about it anymore.
No.
Just like kind of crazy to see it happen over my lifetime. But.
Well, I don't even know if it's like the demise of the institution. It's how out of touch it is. Like you think about all the issues that we have facing the world right now and the disparity between income levels. And then you have a bunch of people who are being paid stupid amounts of money to pretend to be another person. Like they're so out of touch, probably by nature, because that's their whole job is to be not themselves, to be another human being. That they've lost touch with what is actually real. And so for what's real with people right now is that it's hard to pay your rent. It's hard to buy your food. It's hard to live. It's hard to have a voice. It's hard to do just about everything right now. And so I think that for these people to then go give themselves, trophies for pretending to be somebody else, nobody's really buying that.
Right.
And so I think it's people like, God love Kelsey, it's people who actually just really enjoy that kind of thing for the sport of it. That's who's watching it. But the general public, I don't think is really watching it because they don't care. Because when they don't have too much, work to do otherwise, and they don't have time on their hands to be wasting on some rich people patting themselves on the back. And two, it doesn't feel like it's genuine anymore because, what say do you have in the Oscars, honestly? Mm-hmm. Probably limited to none because it's all whoever they pick, right?
Yeah. And that's what I thought was interesting too. It was a small storyline throughout the night. Barbie won next to nothing.
Wow.
Which I was like, after all the cheering and everything about this, the only person who got any type of acknowledgement from that movie was a man. Oh shoot. No. So anyways, I thought that was these are just kind of interesting storylines I kind of caught on to. I do have one question before we move on. We look at two cultural institutions, at least historically. Super Bowl, most viewed Super Bowl in history this year. Mm-hmm. Oscars tanking every year. What do you think it is about these two situations that you say are leading to fewer viewers on one versus the other?
Well, I know that this one had a lot of viewership because of old T Swift there and her love affair, and everybody's feeling connected to that. There's people who are like diehard Swifties, right? Yeah. So people who are spending thousands of dollars to go to multiple shows of hers just to feel like they can breathe in the same air as her. So I think that was part of it. The other thing I think is that people are more drawn to the sports because they feel like it's almost become like a religion, right? They watch it all the time. It's something that they practice. They play the sport sometimes themselves. They know all the players, all the stats, every in and out, all the scandals, all the trades. So there's a lot of invested time and effort into it. Whereas the Oscars, it's kind of like you saw a movie once and then you have no other touch point for it. So there's not really a lot of, buy-in for a person to really be invested in the Oscars, honestly, because there's just not a lot of interaction and engagement. Whereas somebody could tweet one of the football players and they could tweet back because they're a real human being. They're not playing a part. That's their life, and you're a part of it because you've interacted with them. And then honestly, people feel like they have some control in the game too when they're there and they're screaming, yelling, booing, whatever they want to do. They feel like that's really kind of impacting the players, so they feel like they have some measurable locus of control again. So it's about what you feel that you can impact, and Oscars just feels out of touch, so people don't buy into it as much.
Yeah, that's fair to me. Sounds good. Speaking of people not buying into things, reports are coming out. Concerns that people are having. H&R Block. Cancellations. They're receiving a lot of cancellations these days. And H&R Block, people don't know, obviously is a company based on doing tax returns for people, mainly for individuals, but as well as accountants are reporting an increase in cancellations of their appointments with people trying to file their taxes. This year, we are seeing an increase of people not filing their taxes, which is absolutely crazy if true. We've been looking into it on our own, trying to come across the numbers and stats on our own, but right now it's a lot of anecdotes, so we can't really speak for sure if this is happening, how much, if it is happening across the country, or if it's just kind of focused to a specific area. But right now, from just the anecdotes that we know, people are struggling financially. People are struggling to cover their bills, and they might be looking at their taxes and seeing, shoot, I owe money this year. Maybe I'll just push this off to next year and not file at all. We're seeing more of that this year, which I think is a very crazy storyline, especially based on the backdrop of everything we've been seeing in politics this year.
Yeah, and honestly, I filed my taxes about 2 weeks ago because I knew I was getting money back.
Oh, you're a good boy.
I'm going to be intoxicated is what I call it.
Gosh.
It's when the money flows this way.
Okay, let's go.
So I took advantage of the first time home buyer savings account. And so I set one up for myself and I set one up for my wife. We each dumped $8,000 to both of those. So we were able to take $16,000 off of our tax returns. I also did $15,000 worth of education, so that came off as well. And then where Jen went on maternity leave, so we had our daughter, we had a bunch of medical expenses that we were able to claim.
Oh, nice.
So it turned out to be quite a bit of money that we were able to claim, and then made it quite a bit of money to come back to us. It's almost 2 weeks. It still has not been deposited in my account yet. That is new. So last year when I filed mid-March. And so I filed early March. I was like, oh yeah, it's going to get in here early because, not a lot of people do it early. They leave it to the very last minute. That's just the way humans are. And yeah, still nothing in my bank account yet. Like that's new. That's the first time for me. So usually like last year it took, I think it was like 3 or 4 days. Year before that, it took about a week, but never 2 weeks. So we're getting on almost 2 weeks now and no tax return in my bank account. So yeah, if you're not filing your taxes, like who cares? All the power to you, because even when you do file them, knowing that you're getting a return, the return doesn't come. So I'll keep you updated when that lands, but it's been a while.
Oh, they're equally so on their end too. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah, of course. We love to see it. Yeah, it's, I admittedly, again, I don't think I've seen anything like this personally in my lifetime. I'm sure it's probably happened at other points in history. I can't really speak to it because I don't know. But knowing what I'm seeing on the streets, I'm seeing in terms of stats of mortgage delinquencies, which we'll get into here shortly. People seeing the price of food, people not being able to afford food. As I said off the top, family members in the hospital. I've been seeing a lot of homeless people coming in the hospital and taking things, and leaving. That's been happening more too. So people are in need. People are struggling, and so I'm not surprised to hear that people are like, I'm not going to file this year. And it's funny that those who are a little more politically inclined will be like, well, yeah, protest, show them what's up. They're giving money to Ukraine. Trudeau's paying off a rife scam. This is what the government gets. And it's like, it's not really like that. I think it's mainly people who are just struggling, who don't have the money to, if they do owe, they don't have the money to give up right now. Yeah.
That's honestly what I'm hearing too, because my parents being a small business owner, but also working 2 full-time jobs. So shout out to them for just being wild people. But anyway, they have a lot of friends who also have small businesses. I shouldn't say small-time business. They have small businesses, meaning that they earn up to $500,000. But anyway, those folks are not filing their taxes right away. There's been a whole bunch of problems with the loans that were given out over COVID to sustain business, that they all got called back in January. One lady telling my mom that she wishes that she would have let her business die during COVID because it would have cost her less than it is right now. And I was like, that is a statement.
Gee.
Can you imagine that? I wish my business would have died during COVID because it would have cost me less than letting it limp along to where it is now. And I now have to pay more. Like, that's awful. And it just kind of like, I had sent you the business delinquencies graph, and I was just like, this is really, really, really bad. And then you've got somebody like Chrystia Freeland going, Canada has added so many more jobs. And then Daniel Foch, he like does a breakdown. He's like, yeah, but they're all in the public sector. So funny how that is. You wonder how many different government officials are just like, add more jobs quickly. We need to, bring this number up a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But because the private sector lost jobs. When you look at the actual numbers, the private sector lost, and then the public sector just gained in leaps and bounds. The other thing that's happening is the amount of people who are self-employed has gone up quite a bit. And you see that because private sector obviously cutting back and people going, well, I have to do something and I can't get hired anywhere and I don't have whatever I need for the public sector. So I got to create something. And so it's interesting because it's like, it's an entrepreneurial spirit of desperation. I think what's happening just because, things are just not working out. And so I worry how many of those will actually survive. Right. So
one thing I want to call out based on what you just said, and because when we kind of see these things, obviously it feels dark, feels heavy. But when we hit financially tough times, great things are come out of those. True. Typically, some of the coolest businesses come out of recessions.
Yep.
And so that in some ways, yeah, like a lot of those small businesses aren't probably going to survive this. However, I think some really cool businesses will be birthed out of this. I do think Canada will rebound from the second Trudeau era. I think we will come back stronger. It will take us some time, but I really do think some cool businesses are being born during this time. Those who are working small business right now, do not quit. Keep fighting because brighter days are ahead and things will get better. And it would be really cool to see your business survive and make it through this. And then you can see it on the other side.
I love that you're taking that approach tonight because I'm like looking at some other things. And I'm like, I don't know if Irish times are ahead. So I'm gonna pass my optimistic crown over to Josh tonight because I'm loving what I'm seeing. I'm glad for it. So tonight we've swapped roles, I think.
Let's go. Well, we talked about delinquencies, right? And so I think we'll get into this. This is CTV did this up, and we'll kind of chat about what the stats that they're putting out, which I think is pretty crazy.
New snapshot tonight from Equifax Canada of the financial pinch Canadians are facing and the growing number missing repayments. Nationally, mortgage delinquency rates rose 52.3% in the last quarter of 2023, more in BC and Ontario, where house prices are higher. Delinquency rates for non-mortgages, including credit cards, rose almost 30%. High interest rates and inflation are being blamed for the surge. The financial picture comes on the eve of the Bank of Canada's next interest rate decision tomorrow. The central bank is widely expected to hold at 5%.
So this video was done last week, was when the rate announcement was being announced, and since then the rate did hold. But some of those numbers are really crazy to look at. The one specifically is
in Ontario.
This one right here was the mortgage delinquency rates. That is the number, 52.3%.
Yeah,
like that's from close to 0% to 52.3 is crazy.
Yeah, but side note, I find CBC is so bad for crap like this. Like, I know what they're trying. Or is it CTV?
Yeah.
Either way. Left-wing media. But no, because like CBC also did, the reason why I said CBC is because CBC did that graph where they just like did a little squiggle and they had the dates moved around, and I hate bad data displays. It's the bane of my existence, because that's all I do every day is I work with data and then try and put it into a format that people can digest it and understand it. And it's like, this is like, I get what they're saying, but it took me way too long to have to go, wait a second.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? Because I knew what the number was, but then when I was reading that, I was like, that's not what the number I knew. And that's what that's saying. I was really confused. And the way they're displaying that is absolute trash.
Yeah.
I hate that. But anyways, delinquencies have risen quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, seeing credit card delinquencies go to 30% from like 1.2, 1.3%.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's obviously trending in the wrong direction, but that is essentially the ebbs and flows of an economy, unfortunately. In some cases, some governments make it worse than others, but that's kind of how there's ups and downs to economies, but we're in the really bad times at the moment, and we're seeing a lot of the pain. And as you say, we talked about at the beginning of the show, private jobs are being lost, leaving people living off their savings or living off of credit altogether, trying to survive.
Yeah. The other thing I found funny about the way that he explained this was that he was like, yeah, he's like, and the worst being felt in Ontario where the house prices are higher. And it's like, that's like saying like, people are saying ouch when they get burned. Yeah. It's like, duh. You know, where it's most expensive, people are defaulting the most. Yeah. Like, wow.
I'm so surprised. Yeah. So this kind of come part and parcel with what we started talking about earlier, where people are just not filing their taxes. The reality is we are seeing the effects of these higher these higher interest rates. Less money's in the economy now. Dollars are harder to come by, and people are struggling and don't have much to live off of at the moment. And where does that take us here going forward? I talked about at the beginning of the show. I really, truly believe there will come a time where it will get better. We're just going to see some pretty, admittedly, I think it'll be for probably at least another 2 years of some really tough times here moving forward. But the key is, this is just my mentality in general. You can beat the absolute tar out of me, but I still keep coming. And I keep saying, I didn't hear no bell. I will always keep coming forward. And to our listeners who are struggling financially at the moment, going through tough times, don't know if they're going to keep their house or not, keep moving forward. Keep getting up. As much as the media or your friends or you feel like the government is beating you down, you got to keep moving forward. Keep your head positive as hard as it can be at times. And just know brighter days are ahead. I truly believe that.
Yeah. See, I was listening to my country music playlist on the way here because I was like, I need some some simpler times here.
You went to the country music.
Oh, I love myself some country music, but Darius Rucker sings a song called All Right, and he's like, I got shoes under my feet, you know, and a woman I love laying in my bed, like all these like things that are just like very, very small things that make life worthwhile. And I that's what I have to do, is I have to keep coming back to that, because like this kind of crap, like it stresses you out. It makes you go gray, and it gives you, you know, all kinds of health problems you don't want to have. So yeah, that's what you have to keep coming back to, is that gratitude, going, okay, there's still some good things. I've got some good things. I will temper that with the fact that like, but don't be ignorant. Mm-hmm. Be aware that this is all happening. Definitely be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for the things that you've earned and that you've worked for, and don't lose hope. But at the same time, always be pushing, because we can't let this crap keep going on, because if it does, I'm going to lose my mind.
I don't blame you. Well, speaking of brighter days ahead, we saw Saskatchewan coming out. Mr. Mo saying, you know what? Screw all of you guys. We're done paying your carbon tax.
Suck it.
What happens when a provincial government defies federal law? Well, we're about to find out, CBC says, and I'm excited to see what happens. Really, if you read through this article, there's, you know, they kind of go back to Guilbeault's history of being an absolute criminal. We go through what could happen when provincial governments start defying federal law. We chat about how the federal government is so really disgusted at the fact that Saskatchewan dares fight back, and they feel like Saskatchewan's setting a scary precedent that needs to be addressed. And, you know, that's kind of the rhetoric that's being spread throughout this article. And the one thing I really do want people to kind of keep in mind here is, like, what happens, when the day Polyev, I love that they said this in the article, the day that Polyev gets into power and, there's someone on the other side of them opposing them, are they going to be okay with them breaking federal laws? And what I say to that is, the only reason why I see Scott Moe doing what he's doing is he's not just doing it because he's like, I feel like being a jerk today. I'm not going to listen to the federal government on this one. He's like, no, he's actually received pressure from his constituents and seen people starving in the streets that they need carbon tax relief. And he's listening to his people. So his pressure, the people are putting pressure on him to do something about it. And this is his response to that. I don't think there's like a precedent being set in that regard. I think the people are speaking loud and clear. Quebec can do it, is allowed to do it all the time. But all of a sudden, someone out west is starting to speak up for themselves. Oh my gosh, it's the end of the world over here. We need to make sure these guys stay in line. And so one thing I did thought was interesting, that one of the, someone who I believe is, I can't remember the name, so that's on me. But he's like a head of a farmers forum. He made up a good point where Trudeau the Liberals don't really have a big footprint in rural areas. Thus, they don't really have a really good understanding of what's happening out there. Thus, they can input policies that really screw over working class people, and they don't really understand why or how that's happening. So, or maybe they do. You be the judge. But that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. But the whole Guilbeault calling me moral, Scott Moe saying screw it, big fights happen. Where do you think this goes?
I just love how Daniel Smith was like, Chrystia Freeland, we can work with you. But she's like, Guilbeault, though, he's got to go. Guilbeault's got to go. And then you've got Mr. Moe there going, Guilbeault has got to go. And then even the CBC is posting that picture where he looks like the Joker from Batman. Yeah. Like that look on his face, like I'm just like, oh my, you look like a crazy person. And I think that like if Trudeau, even though he's hated, I think there's a lot more hate out there for Guilbeault, honestly. And the Liberals would be wise to maybe move that environment minister out of there, personally thinking. Like, honestly, if the Liberal Party wanted to save itself, like step number one, dethrone Trudeau, put somebody else in his place. Step number two, get rid of his number two, which is Guilbeault. So, but to get back to the point of Saskatchewan doing this, I don't like that they have to, abandon federal law, because it does create a divide. But at the same time, I get it, because when he addressed it, he said, what's immoral is the fact that you would treat different Canadians, or that you treat Canadians in the East differently than you would treat Canadians in the West. He's like, how is that fair? How is that moral? And nobody's really answered him on that one. He's like, why can you create a carve out for them? He's like, and then even after you said there's no more carve outs, you created a carve out for Yukon. He's like, why is it that everybody gets their carve out? And he's like, we're not even talking about Quebec, because Quebec they get 50% of equalization, for Pete's sake. Like, they get the biggest carve out of everything. And so he's like, why do we not get it in Saskatchewan? And I'm like, yeah, good point. Keep doing what you're doing. And I think that he is really just doing it on a moral ground, because he said, listen, like, I took the legal responsibility upon myself. He's like, I took it off the corporation. I took it off the people that were there. I'm not going to run again. He's like, and this is just my like parting gift to Saskatchewans to say, like, I care about you. I'm doing this because I know that you're hurting. And so I have to say that man has got he's got some kahunas, because he's taking on a lot. And I think that the government could bury him if they wanted to, but I think they'd make a martyr out of him, and so they can't afford to. And so that's why it's just kind of like simmering right now, and they're kind of playing it off as like, oh, the West, they're always out to ruin our fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do, as I said, I give Scott a lot of credit for doing this, because let's be honest, it is scary. It is scary to go against the federal government. Like, let's just be honest. We allude back to a topic we were just talking about at the beginning of the show. If you are feeling you're feeling spicy, and you say, I'm done, I'm not filing my taxes this year, let's be honest, the first email you get that says you better file your taxes or this is going to happen, that's scary. You know, like, oh, we're talking about possible imprisonment or we're talking about wicked fines. Like, what do we see? Like, that can be scary. And so when the pushback is harder and harder, and then one that is so publicized like this one, where you better give us our carbon tax money or you're out of here or we're going to do this or we're going to do, like, I'm curious of the threats that are happening behind the scenes right now of like what they can do. I do know that Trudeau's government has been very quiet about this.
Yeah.
And they're trying to figure out how do we respond to this in such a way we don't look bad. Well, worse than we are.
It's how do we respond to this and not make him a martyr is the thing, right? Because they know that will happen. If they come out attacking him and he's like, I'm just Robin Hood right now trying to feed the poor people of Nottingham, he's going to look like evil Prince John. You know what I mean? And not the fun Disney version either.
True.
So yeah, they know they need to handle this carefully. And so that's why they've been like, well, we'll just have to cut back on the amount you receive in your climate action bonus then. And everyone's like,
great.
Cool.
Sweet. You're not taking any money from us? Oh, that works for me. I don't really care about your bonus because everyone knows the BS and actually how it works. Shadow Vicky on Twitter.
Oh my God. Do you want to read that one?
Yeah. As you search it up, read it up. I'm going to give it some preface and background on this. So Vicky is a Twitter account or an X, whatever you want to call it. And I truly believe personally that this Twitter account is a burner account for some random Liberal MP because the things that they say on this freaking account is wild. Like, it's just totally unhinged, totally out to lunch. Don't fully understand where they're at. And like, I'm curious about their mental state, if I'm being honest. But this was a fun little tweet they released today.
Yeah. So get ready for this. So they've got a big picture of Pierre looking awful sad with his glasses on because, you know, pre-makeover Pierre. And he hasn't quite gotten beautiful like the 90s sitcoms, you know, hasn't taken off the glasses. Anyway, he says, they say, axing the carbon tax means Canada would have no climate plan if this man was PM. The wildfires we saw last summer, the smoke, the lasting haze, the harm to people with respiratory issues.
Respiratory?
Both are correct.
Are they? Oh.
Yeah. Average Canadians, the damage they did to crops, the environment would get steadily worse. Vicky Campbell. But then the part that kills me is when you look in the comment section. I love the comment section. I live for it. She says, the carbon tax has already been successful. You have no idea how it works, do you? And this person goes, can you explain its success? And she goes, it's available on the government website. Find it for yourself.
Oh, shoot.
And this other person goes, so in other words, you don't have an answer. And I feel like that's the truth. I hear it so often when you're talking to somebody and you disagree on something and they're like, you just need to do your research. And you're like, okay, well, what research do you have? And they're like, I'm not going to do the emotional labor for you. And you're like, so you don't know. You're telling me to go do something because you haven't done it yourself. True. It's the biggest cop out and like supposed dunk on the other person.
As you advocate for a tax that takes money from other people, so they change what they do. Got it. Sounds good to me.
Which they've already shown has no impact on the environment whatsoever.
Yeah, it's only made people poorer. That's about it. No matter, it is. I've really found it really fun. That's the one thing I've enjoyed this past week was going through some of the comment section on some of our videos and just seeing some of the lefties get on. We saw it during our TikTok live last week where someone just kept trolling us the whole time. And it had to have been a troll joke because the stuff they're saying was hilariously stupid. But it was just like some of the stuff people are saying, I'm like, gee, like, do you really believe that? Like, I have to ask. And I'm sure they think the same about me. But it just like some of the stuff I'm like, don't you see the people struggling out here? Like, do you really think this is a good idea? Okay.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw Elon's tweet today and it was like trying to talk to somebody today is like trying to run into a burning building, pulling them out and trying to save them while they're punching you in the face. Yeah. I was like, yeah. Yeah.
That's actually a great point. I appreciate it. Well, we'll shift it a little bit here. Alberta saying, screw you. Saskatchewan saying, screw you. Ontario has come out saying, half a screw you.
Yeah, I know.
Doug Ford getting on about the carbon tax hike coming up here on April 1st and the potential outcomes.
Wake up, smell the coffee. Like, what don't you understand? Cancel this carbon tax, put it on hold, do whatever, and if you don't, the people of Canada are going to annihilate you when the election comes up. Simple as that.
Simple as that. When Dougie's coming out, which, you know, say what you want about him, I think just from a political perspective, when Ontario, one of like the biggest voices because of due to sheer riotings, comes out and says, y'all better figure out this carbon tax stuff over. You're going to get screwed. Is really interesting. Actually, sorry, going back to the CBC article, and Guibo says, well, you know, like this disobeying federal law, like we have ways to deal with that in this country. We have elections or we have the courts. So you can go through one of those two ways. And he said at the beginning, he said earlier, that's been done. And everyone told him to screw off. Wouldn't even really look at the case. So yeah, people are feeling a little hopeless. So now they're just going to stop listening to you.
Yeah. And it's also very rich coming from somebody who also broke federal laws to be like, you should not break the federal laws. It's immoral. Like, so it's okay when you do it? Well, that's different. It kind of reminds me of back a few years ago when we had a liberal MLA currently sitting in my riding that got into power because our liberal premier stepped down, and he got moved into power, and he was telling all the people to stop breaking COVID rules. And he said, you know, there was 10 children out on a dock and we had to send the police out there to break them up because they're gathering too much. And then he's like, why won't people just follow the rules? And then everybody's like, can you tell us more about your DUIs? Jeez. And so to me, it's the same thing. It's like the people in power who don't abide by the rules that they're mad that other people aren't abiding by. And it's like, really? You can't stand in your soapbox and talk about the rule of law and how we need to respect the federal government when you weren't doing it yourself.
Yeah. And so going back to Dougie's statement here, where I think this is kind of was interesting for him to publicly come out. And I understand there's people who are like, Josh, like, of course he's a conservative. Of course he's going to do that. And it's like, okay, the simplicity of parties frustrates me on that type of argument. Doug has proven to me through and through that he's no different than Trudeau. I personally don't really care. I think he cares about Ontarians, doesn't care about his constituents.
Oh God, no.
And he's really just there. He is the stereotypical conservative of just, I'm here to enrich my buddies. And I really do truly believe someone who's a Rob Ford stan, his brother will be so mad at him for what he's done with Ontario, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, his brother's there rolling in his cocaine. I mean, grave.
Hater. Dude, the first election I ever had a chance to participate in was for mayor of Toronto, and I voted Rob Ford. And I will never, ever, ever be ashamed of that.
The people's mayor.
He was the people's mayor, baby. He did such a good job, dude. I hate everyone that hates on him, especially the people that weren't living in Toronto. They think they know something when they don't know anything, specifically Nova Scotians. So yeah, screw you.
Hi, I'm that person.
Yeah, I know. I hate all of you so much.
You know what? I actually give no craps about Rob Ford or Doug Ford, but it is what you said though. It's the fact that what was represented here is the fact that Ontario, or the embodiment of Ontario in Doug Ford right now, is saying, nah, we're not on board. We're actually sticking with Alberta and Saskatchewan. And you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
Is it going to be provinces versus the feds? That's what it's shaping up to be.
Yeah, and like I have to ask, where does this go? Like where does this take us? You know, and we've already kind of talked about the strategy behind it. Do they take a hard line? Do the feds take a hard line? Or do they try to soften the blow a little bit? Because I really feel like Liberals are in a lose-lose situation on this. Mm-hmm. Either they take a hard line and then, you said, they make a martyr of one of these premiers, or they take a step back on their carbon tax and lose all credibility. Either way, I think this might be an opportunity where we might be able to get them on this.
You know what would be a nice birthday present? Is if all the premiers, aside from Quebec, we know Quebec's never going to do anything with the rest of the country. But anyway, if you got like BC to Nova Scotia to just like all go, we're not paying the carbon tax, actually, we're done. What would they do if the whole country just went, Nope. like I said, obviously not Quebec. Quebec's like, well, no, give us the equalization. We'll pay whatever you want to. So, like if the rest of the country though, what would happen? That would be fun. I would look forward to that day. I'd be like glued to the monitor being like, give me the highlights.
I mean, that's a protest I could get behind. It would be very interesting to see that all take place and just be like, yeah, what would they do? There's nothing they could do. And be like, wow, like you would have essentially stripped the feds of their power in that regard, in that specific regard, which is crazy, that's never happened in this country, at least during Confederation. And so I'm just, it would be wild.
So would you call that like the provinces losing confidence in the feds then? Like, you know what I mean? Because under our constitution, the federal government and the provincial governments are supposed to have an equal share of power with the division of responsibilities that makes sense at the time. Canada Post had to be a federal institution, same with the railroad, because, it was 1867. But, seriously though, the idea was that in a federal system, there's a division of power that's equal between the federal government and the provincial governments. So what happens if all the federal governments get together and just say, this is unconstitutional, this is hurting our people, we have a duty to act, and then act against the federal government? It'd be interesting.
Yeah, that would be one thing I would get my popcorn for.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I know that it says it nowhere in our constitution, but I feel like that should count as a vote of no confidence.
Yeah. You know what would happen?
What?
Emergencies Act. We're pausing all the health transfers to all the provinces, freezing their bank accounts.
Now you can die in the hospital hallways in the dark and the cold.
Like they're not already.
Oh man.
He called me
Oh, that was the wrong button. Whoops.
Got you too riled up.
Yeah, I got me too fired up. Actually, what was this one?
Amazing.
Yeah, that was what I wanted. All right. Well, speaking up, getting fired up. Quebec farmers getting in the streets of Rimouski saying, we're done with the red tape. We're done with the trash taxes that you're putting on stuff that is coming in the country, making our jobs harder, slimming down our margins. We're done with it. And then we're going to do a European-style farmers protest, which was also inspired by the convoy. And we're getting in the streets right now to let you know we are done with this.
Do you know what? Maybe I take my comment back earlier. Maybe Quebec's going to join hand in hand is going to be the most unifying thing we've ever seen.
Maybe.
Alberta, Quebec, hand in hand saying, screw you, government. Like, who knows? I mean, get your bingo card out because anything could be on it.
I'll admit, dude, if that ever happened, that would probably single-handedly be the time where I honestly felt super proud to be Canadian. If that ever happened, I'd be like, wow, we actually unified the country on one thing.
Yeah. Trudeau, the greatest prime minister ever, made so many people mad that we actually brought people together.
Dude, it was a long con the whole time, bro.
What a guy.
Yeah, this was interesting. Like, so, admittedly, these protests taking shape here in Quebec and Rimouski, I can't find anywhere that's covering the story.
Mm-hmm.
Only two sources covering this. True North and Rebel News. No other paper, no other publication is covering the story right now.
TikTok had it.
Yeah, that's not a publication.
I know it's not a publication, but like that's where I'm saying, like, if it wasn't for Rebel News, True North, and TikTok, we wouldn't know about it unless you were on the ground there. Mm-hmm. It was the same thing happening with the protests over in Europe. Yeah. Nowhere was covering it. CBC didn't cover it. CTV didn't cover it. There was maybe a post by the National Post, but even they didn't cover it very much. And I was like, guys, I'm disappointed in you. You're my source right now. So, yeah, it is interesting. I know that I came down on Rebel News, but like we need them. Mm-hmm. We do need them. You need a balance because, yeah.
I think we traumatized the system in February of 2021 or 2022. They don't want to get anywhere near something like this that could galvanize the country. And they don't want anyone to know that this is going on because the feds do not want any more discord that they've already been dealing with in the country. And so these farmers are a little frustrated. We'll read through this True North article a little bit here. It says several hundred farmers from Bas-Saint-Laurent and Gaspésie region traveled to Rimouski to participate in the demonstration by the Federation of the Union of Agricultural Producers of Bas-Saint-Laurent. Dozens of tractors and trailers joined together in a convoy in a circle in front of the office of Minister Mathilde Blanchet Vézina, who represents the Bas-Saint-Laurent and Gaspésie, Île-de-la-Madeleine regions. Afterwards, the tractors moved to the offices of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food of Quebec. The demonstrators say they are particularly worried about what the future holds for the next generation of farmers. And so you see some of these videos where they're gridlocking things in front of these government buildings, which I think is the right place to do it.
Yeah.
That's where you want to make an impact. And apparently CBC Radio Canada was covering it, but I still can't find whatever they were posting about it. They took comments from the protesters. And a dairy producer, Francois Pigeon, Pigeon, as they would say, acknowledges that the protest was inspired by the ongoing European farmers' protests in places like France, Belgium, and Poland. However, Pigeon wanted to make clear that the demonstrators had no intention of creating any social unrest, just merely wanted their presence to be recognized. Probably the most Canadian response I've ever heard in my life. Like, we just want to shake things up a bit. But what they wanted to make known was the rising cost of suppliers for farmers like fertilizer, fuel, and machinery has led to them being faced with record low profits. One farmer's sign read, "Notre faim sera votre faim," which translates to "Our end will be your hunger."
That's a statement. I mean, and it's exactly right. Like, we rely on farmers in order to feed us. And it's just been everything that's been coming out lately has just been attack on farmers. And it was like, I think we had talked about the World Economic Forum, talking about how farming was one of the biggest contributors to climate change.
Yeah.
It's just, farming was basically next to, kicking puppies. And like, it's like, really? We're demonizing farmers here. The people who put food on your plate. Like, talk about biting the hand that feeds you. So yeah, I totally agree with this. Our end will be your hunger, 100%. And I just I actually don't understand where this government thinks that they're going to be helping the system by taking away farming in our country. Like, you will create famine.
So I think I have an idea what the plan is, and you probably know too. The goal from my perspective is push private farming to such a point where they have to sell off their farms. I think the government will be there to buy it all up. I think essentially that is the end goal. That is the definition of conspiracy theory. Like the base definition of a conspiracy theory is that, because I don't really have any tangible proof that's the case. But that if I follow the dots and connect them, that's essentially where this goes. And when you see kind of these different presentations happening in the World Economic Forum and the things that they're pushing, they do want more centralized power, more and more and more. So I do see that kind of being the end goal, very potential, like a huge potential.
I think that I wouldn't say the government would buy the farms, honestly.
Corporations.
I think you'd see corporations. I think you'd see the corporations that are then owned by BlackRock, by State Street. I don't see the governments themselves, because it would be too easy. You'd tie back the government to that. I think you have to have something a little more convoluted, something like a large corporate entity, a Monsanto or what have you, come in. A Bayer would come in and they would buy the farms, and then basically the farmer would be like, it would almost be like fiefdom, like way back in the day, when you had lords over the land, and the peasants kind of worked the land and paid rent and food to the farm, or to the lords. Yeah, that's kind of what I see just happening over again. It's just a cycle. Yeah, and so, but it's just the lords are now BlackRock and State Street, and I can't remember the third one.
I mean, there was a few of them.
I know, but
they all have similar names.
The three big ones, I always remember those two, because those are like the biggest of the big. But there's a third one. Anyway, we'll find it. We'll tell you later. Yeah. But yeah, that's who I think is going to be behind the scenes buying things up, because they have no loyalty to any nation. They don't care. They're just out there to maximize wealth as much as possible. Yeah.
I agree with that. I actually take back my statement. I do agree. I agree with that more. That's more likely we're going to, just because that's the pattern we've been seeing in general.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're seeing happening in the States with the housing market. And so that's why when you were kind of talking earlier about like mortgage delinquencies and like, don't worry, brighter things are ahead. This is where I get in my like dark space, because I'm like, I see that the private entities are going to come through and it's going to be like Killam Properties, or it's going to be, you know, some of the smaller names that you recognize that are going to buy up all the homes. But then behind the scenes, they're going to get bought up by a larger entity who's then, again, going to be bought up by BlackRock or State Street. Like, you're just going to see basically these big equity firms that just own everything, so that there's not truly individual ownership. And then it's the smaller guys that are going to have to beat their way through the system in order to get space to play.
Absolutely. And this goes back to, this one I think mainly goes back to people who happen to, whatever you do own, whether you be owning Bitcoin, you own some portion of a property, or you own land somewhere, whatever, what have you, whatever you can to keep your autonomy, fight like hell to keep it. If it means that you have to, like, you're scrimping by, trying to find ways to kind of get money freed up somewhere to be able to maintain that autonomy, I think is super crucial. Obviously, a lot of powers out there are trying to kind of crush that you know, single spirit. But like I'm feeling it too. I'm feeling the crunch. I'm feeling the pinch. These interest rates are really tough. We're starting to accumulate more debt. I'm trying to limit how much debt is incurred in our household. But it's getting spooky out there. Mm-hmm. But the little bit I do own, you're gonna have to pry it out of my cold dead hands, 100%.
Yeah, I'm the same way, honestly. We were having a rough go last year, and which is also why our tax return is good. But like this year, now that Jen's back to work, I've got a better job, and I even started my own business on the side so that I can take advantage of contracts that come, and do those on the side as well. Like all these little things that we're doing, like we own the bank owns our house, but we bought it and we're making our payments on it, and we haven't missed a payment. We're always on time with that. So it's these little steps. They just don't feel like anything, but they actually mean a lot. So if that's where you're at, keep going, because that's going to be super important to allow you to have a voice. And something that I thought was interesting, like when we were talking to Reality Shannon, she said, you know, it's my husband owning his own company and doing his own thing, or talking to another creator who he owns his own company, and that was what allowed him to move and take his family with him. Like, you know what I mean? Like these kind of things, like having ownership of your stuff, of your things, of your business, of your means of production, of your home. That's what actually gives you autonomy. Because I do not believe that if you own nothing, you will be happy. I think it's the exact opposite.
Mm. Yep. I mean, just look at the people who are peddling that message, and what do they stand to gain by spreading that message?
Yeah. And also, are they living by what they preach? Do they own nothing? Mm. Seems like they own an awful lot. And like I said, the key words in that is always, you will own nothing. You will be happy. It's not we. Mm-hmm. If he was like, we will own nothing and we will be happy, that's a whole different message. That's not the message.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And as we talk about the demise of the federal government, shout out Jennifer L. We were supposed to have her on this week. Schedules got mixed up. We're going to be having her on in next week. But we're bringing her spirit on today. Mm-hmm. She got into the mix with some MPs this past week. Oh, jumping. Oh, these liberals are something else. They keep stepping in it. So first, we're going off with Mr. Hardy over here. And, Jennifer tweeted something out, and just tweeted out polling data. And the polling data said, the question is, it feels like everything is broken in Canada right now. 70% polled agree with that statement. 27% disagree with it. That's a big disparity. Mm-hmm. Mr. MP Ken Hardy comes out. Let's just make sure I'm right on this. Yep. Because I'll hear it from Jennifer later if he's not an MP. He's from Surrey, BC. He says, take a look around the planet. Yes, things are tough for some here in Canada, but most of the world would love to trade their troubles for ours. And this man got ratioed to oblivion 390,000 views on this tweet, 76 likes, 1.2 thousand comments. Get Shrek'd, bro.
Yep. And then her comment back, this is what I thought was really, really good. And you could tell because 585 people liked it. Certainly a lot more than 76. Yeah.
And she says, things can be bad all over, but we can also acknowledge the very real struggle here at home. The fact the majority feel like some things are broken should be taken seriously. It's not just this government's fault. It's a collective issue, but we shouldn't gaslight people out of it.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I thought too. It's kind of like when you tell your friend, you're like, oh man, I'm having the worst day. Like my dad, or, my dad went to the hospital, and somebody else will be like, oh yeah, well, I don't have a dad. And it's like, both situations suck. Yeah. But it's like the fact that you had to come in there and do that is just so obnoxious. And it's exactly right. Like this MP, like how tone deaf can you be? And I had said because she had posted on her TikTok, and I kind of wrote onto it. I said, it's giving gaslighting. And then the other thing I said, it's also really easy to say when you're an MP getting paid by the people who are struggling, because you're also getting a raise soon. Congrats, MPs.
Yep.
So everybody else is just trying to scrape together what they can. And had a really sad moment this past weekend. This is not my life usually, but we had made stew, and we picked out all the good vegetables and the meat and stuff and gave it to my daughter because she won't eat the broth. And so then we had 3/4 of a jar of just broth and some sadness. And so we split it up between myself and my wife. And I was like, well, there's not really enough. I was like, we could throw some water in it. So we threw some water in, and I was like, now it's just really watered down broth. I was like, this is giving poverty. This is bad. But the fact is, I laugh about that, but that's some people's reality. And it's actually kind of not funny when you think about it. And so you get somebody like that looking at somebody like this, saying, take a look around the planet. Things are worse elsewhere. It's like, no, take a look in your backyard. There's people struggling in Surrey, BC. So yeah, do better.
Yeah. And you're the one at the table being able to have an impact on those decisions. So
exactly.
I know he's just trying to deflect and oh, we're not doing that bad a job. At least we're not like these other guys. That gives, or just your boss comes to you and says, you could really start picking it up. We're kind of losing revenue based on your performance here. You've lost money here, lost money there. And you turn around to your boss well, at least I'm not as bad as that guy over there. Idiot.
Yeah.
You're a moron.
But what other places was he talking about? Did he want to be at least we're not as bad as Ukraine. They've got a whole, a superpower attacking them. You know what I mean? Give me a break.
Seriously.
Come on.
What a jabroni. And that was funny. Second thing that happened with an MP this week, though.
Is this the lobster lady?
Oh, lobster lady all day, dog.
No.
Dude.
I didn't know you had this.
Diane Leboussier is coming in hot today. She, again, is an MP, Ministry of Fisheries, Oceans, and the Canadian Coast Guard. And she says, yes, conservative politicians, Canadian lobster, deal with it. She's holding the piece of lobster at the Boston Seafood. Don't know what the point she's trying to make there, but she's making a point.
I know. I saw it and I was like, am I losing something in translation? I know my French isn't amazing, but and they have the transcript in English. I'm like, oh, okay. What does this have to do with the conservatives? She's just holding up this beast of a lobster. And I'm like, are you buying it? Are you selling it? Are you just is this supposed to be advertising? Because lady, you're not it. Go talk to national PR or something. I don't know what you're doing, but at first I thought she had a bib on, but then I just realized that was her white shirt underneath. I was like, oh, she's gonna eat the lobster. It's no. Yeah. I really don't know what she's doing.
Her whole point here is she's down in Boston trying to promote Canadian lobster.
How though?
And she just says that unlike the conservatives, we actually support our fisheries. That's what she said, and we all said, what? What's your point? What is this accomplishing? You look like a jabroni. And admittedly, if I didn't see her title, I just thought she'd be some person just hey, here's a lobster. That's all I think it is.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, she's like, I'm down here promoting Canadian fisheries. I'm like, how? Like, what are you doing? I guess that's a part of like the political system we'll have to save for Jennifer, because I'm just like, if I am I don't know, a Costco or a Walmart or whatever the States uses for Superstore, CVS, and I've got this lady coming at me with a lobster being like, Canadian lobster.
Buy it.
I'd be like, okay, crazy. I just don't know what she's doing. Like, is she promising some kind of tax incentive or cuts or reduction on exports if you buy Canadian lobster? Does she have the power to do that? And why are the Conservatives being brought into this? Like, this is the problem with the current Liberal government. It's like everything they do, and it's like, but not the Conservatives. It's like, can you do anything yourselves?
Yeah, this is we're dunking on you guys, and as you said there, it really does give me the vibe of I'm just walking through the streets of Toronto and someone starts chasing me trying to buy a lobster off them. That's what that tells me. I'm like, gee, you're having a tough time out here and trying to make a dime. That's how I feel. I was just like, please buy these lobsters. I just stole them off the back of a truck. They're gonna die any day soon, so please give me $30 for this sucker.
Yeah. It's like we were in Paris a couple years back, and if you go to the Eiffel Tower, there's all these guys with these like sparkly light up Eiffel Towers, and they're just coming at you. Like, they see you and they're like, oh, that's a tourist. And they just come at you. Or if you're on the beaches of Mexico, there's like the people with the parrots and the monkeys and things like that. Yeah. They're like coming at you. And it's just like, that's what it feels like. The Canadian version, like with our lobster.
Absolutely. You come over the Nova Scotian border and you're greeted by this lady. That's what's happening. You're at the tourist destination and she's coming right at you with this. So I was like, yo, Nova Scotia lobster, baby. Yeah. We got you.
Monsieur.
We're in the French-speaking area of New Brunswick that we crossed over to Nova Scotia.
Well, there's Acadiens in Nova Scotia. There's some French here too. She could be. I don't know where she's from. She's probably from Quebec. Let's be real.
Yeah, she's definitely from Quebec, bro. But she's definitely not standing with the farmers out there. Anyways,
farmers of the sea.
Farmers of the sea. This is just a small topic I wanted to touch on. It was really key to me. It's happening in the States primarily, but Walmart is having some tough times with their self-checkouts. People are robbing them blind. They're going with diapers and they're scanning like a soother and buying walking out with however many diapers for the price of $2. And this is happening, and they're getting so many losses, recording a lot of losses through the self-checkout. So Walmart has come out and said, if you pay a monthly fee, you can use the self-checkout. If not, you have to go through a cashier. And that's wild. Yeah. That's kind of where they're at. And I understand why they're doing it, but man, it looks terrible.
It's just funny. Have you seen the Ryan Long skit of it?
We showed it on the show.
Okay, yeah, the stealing section.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what it feels like. But also at the same time, how do you implement this? Because like that's the other part of my job is I do evaluation, but we also look at the implementation process. And so I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, I get it. You want to charge a monthly fee, kind of like, like Costco charges a fee to its members to use its stuff. Are you collecting that at the door? Are you collecting that at the turnstile to get into the self-checkout section? Like, is there a card that you have to scan? Like, how is this going to be policed? Like, there's so much other stuff that has not been figured out with this. And I'm just like, how?
Yeah, I'm gathering from what the article I read in USA Today, they're trying to apply it similar to what Costco does. You have to scan like a rewards card that has the plan uploaded on it for you to unlock essentially the self-checkout. So that's what they're experimenting with.
How fast do you think people will copy those cards and just like $5 for your $98 Walmart card, and everybody just scans it?
I don't think that's how it's going to work. Where you have an active plan. It's going to be kind of similar to like a Netflix subscription. The minute it stops being paid on a monthly basis.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, walk me through your
So what I'm saying is like, I can give my Costco card to you if you didn't have a Costco, and you can just walk over, tap, and then go through the self-checkout or whatever. You can shop. I'm saying like, if Walmart's implementing something similar, and we know that the throughput of Walmart is insane, how often do you think you're just going to see somebody who's just going to be like handing out Walmart subscription cards and be like, just give me $5, this will work for the year, and be on your merry way? I'm just thinking, like, I think there's a lot of room for scamming. I just don't think people are going to do it. I think that the individuals who are obviously stealing, I don't think that they're going to have the money to then fork over for a self-checkout. I think that they're just going to find a way around it so they can continue stealing.
Yeah, we'll see. What I see with Walmart is they were super pumped about these self-checkouts. I'm sure there was like this. They saw a reduction in overhead, and then they saw all the people stealing. And there's like, well, we can't just like get rid of all our self-checkouts now because we spent a lot of money on these things. So we got to figure a way to still be able to use them.
Yeah. And like, let me be clear. The quote for Chrisia.
Tell me.
I don't support stealing things from other people. It's not cool. Not the way to be. That's not how I live my life. But at the same time, I'm also so pumped to see all the different ways people are going to try and get around the system. It's going to be entertainment. I can't wait.
Desperate times calls for desperate measures.
Yeah.
That's what they are.
It feels a little different when it's a large multinational corporation that has wildly been known to exploit and destroy people. So,
yeah, but now they're pulling out at all the the needier areas and communities in the States, which is now leaving them with very little options to purchase. Which so they kind of, in some ways, it's tough. You leave a corporation like that with no choice but to not service your community anymore.
Well, you know what they did? They went in, displaced all the local mom and pop shops, set up dependency, and then left. It's like, screw you, Walmart. Yeah, so that's where I'm just like, yeah, steal whatever you can.
Gee.
And like I said, not advocate for theft, but, sometimes it's kind of funny.
So we're going to get to our last topic of the night here. This came up during your birthday brunch.
Yeah.
Rolling outages with Nova Scotia Power here in our great province. Was this planned? What do you think's going on? I know there's a battle between the provincial government and Nova Scotia Power in terms of how much they can charge. And is this a response of a kind of a protest from Nova Scotia Power without saying it is?
So word on the street is that there was ice on the transmission lines. I did look it up a little bit later because I was like, can that actually be a thing? And so basically what happens is when the ice buildup is too much, it causes resistance. And so it actually diminishes the load. And so they view this as a concern because you can have all kinds of problems with your transmission then. And so we get a lot of our power coming through New Brunswick. And so because we were getting our power coming through New Brunswick, the lines that were connecting us to New Brunswick apparently iced up. And so then they were like, well, crap, we've got to shut this down. Now we don't have enough power generation to actually sustain the whole province. So we're going to have to shut down some places systematically in order to deal with this. And so whether or not it's Nova Scotia Power fighting against the rate hikes or whatever, I think it speaks to the problem of the fact that we need more generation in our own province. And we also need a provincially owned grid that's under the ground that can't be affected by the ice. And so that you can't have, these kind of excuses like this, because I think it's an excuse. If Nova Scotia Power wanted to, they could definitely put their lines underground. They could upgrade them and they could actually do a lot of good by doing that, because then they would actually be able to connect a lot of distributed power sources that they can't do right now because it would cause the grid to be uneven. And so if you're actually updating the lines and updating the infrastructure for that, then it makes sense, but it's just too long of a return on investment for them, so they won't do it. It'd be too much on their books all at once, or even a little bit at a time. It'd be too much on their books to stay. The shareholders would be upset. So this is where I'm like, the province needs to own the distribution lines, and then that would also free up the ability for all kinds of for-profit power generation to come into the province, actually create competition, and then we wouldn't have a monopoly on our power, and we'd actually see real competition, because then they could just pay the provincial government however many cents a kilowatt hour to be a power distributor, and you could choose whatever company you wanted to buy from. So one, it would create competition. Two, it would actually create an income source for the province. So that would be my solution. And it would actually create a really reliable grid, because if you're going to bring on electric cars and electric everything else, that's the one thing that has to be reliable is your grid, because otherwise it will all shut down. Like we saw, like this is ridiculous. Poor Cole Harbor, just like all of it. Eastern Passage just completely out. Cherrybrook out.
Lawrencetown.
Yeah. What about all the businesses over there in Dartmouth Crossing? Like they couldn't work, they couldn't operate, their power was out. Who's paying for their lost revenues? Who's paying the employees who now couldn't collect an income because they couldn't go into work because work shut down? Is that coming out of Nova Scotia Power's pocket? Probably not.
True. Gee, that's fair. That's fair. I think you hit some good points where even if it isn't intentional rolling blackouts or rolling outages, just what the stories that were being told is bad enough.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's exposing a hole in our system, basically. We should not be so reliant on this one monopolist entity to then, supply us all with a need. So my thought is just like, take the veins away from the grid, from the entity, take the grid away, and let us control that the same way that we own the roads and the shops are independent. Let the energy producers be independent, and then, they can pay to play.
Wow.
So that's my conservative liberal style solution to it.
Yeah, the
Very
hybrid.
center.
Let's go. Yeah, I never really thought about that as an idea before. I think that's really interesting. All right. Well, we're going to our wild card segment, big boy.
I can't wait.
Dude, all right, I'm going to bring yours up here. I got to see my reaction to this. We're going to do your funny one first. And you dropped 2 on me here.
I did drop 2 because one I really wanted to do because I'm a nerd.
He's a nerd.
Very much so. But the other one, I was like, I chuckled a lot at this. I was like, I don't know if he's going to find it funny, but
oh boy, here we go.
It's a comment on the current housing situation.
Okay,
so
okay. Here.
Have a look.
Sounds good.
How much do I owe you for rent again?
$800.
I just don't have a lot of money at the moment. Is there something else that I could give you instead?
No, I'd probably just like the money.
Could I interest you in one tit?
I'd really just appreciate the rent money.
There's so much surface area, so many options. Money.
I don't really want that.
And I'm into everything. Holding hands, tongue in mouth, showering with my clothes off, watching each other go number 2.
You know what? Let's just forget about it, okay?
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just Monopoly money.
Okay. Thanks. My turn.
So dumb. I'm so done with you.
I love the looks on all the guys' faces. They're like,
what's happening right now? Very Monopoly.
Showering with my clothes off. It's like, as opposed to what?
Gee, that's cranked. Oh man. All right, I see where you're coming from on that one. Wild. All right, and then you came with a second one that you think is just super cool.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if everybody else is gonna find it as cool as I do, but I really like it. Mostly because I was also the guy that drove to Lunenburg to get a tree. So
yeah, you would be that guy. Yeah, you are that guy. Let's go.
First time ever, you can buy a glow-in-the-dark houseplant. It's called the Firefly Petunia, and it's produced by a company called Light Bio. So how this works is that researchers took the gene from fireflies that help them glow, the luciferase gene, and inserted it into the genome of the plant. But they've been doing this since the 80s. The founder of Light Bio has been doing this since the 80s. Earlier versions of this plant and other plants didn't glow very brightly and required special food, so they weren't really ready to be marketed as a houseplant. What's changed now is that they inserted another gene from a bioluminescent mushroom that basically helps the plant recycle the chemicals needed for that bioluminescence reaction so that the light is sustained, so it glows continuously and more brightly. So unlike other things like the certain fish that are marketed as fluorescent, which glow under a black light, this plant doesn't require any special lights or special foods, it just glows in the dark. The reason it's a petunia specifically is that it's a common ornamental plant. It's not native to North America, but it's not considered invasive, so the risk to local ecology and native plants is really low. Also, why is she looking at it like it's her firstborn son? The company won't start shipping the plant until April, but you can officially pre-order now, so it could still be a good Valentine's or Palentine's Day gift, or who knows, maybe it'll just become your next true love.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was Scientific American that put that out, and I was like, I like ever since watching Avatar back in like 2009 or whatever, and they're like going through the forest and all the plants are lit up. I was like, I want that. And then they're like, we got this glowing plant. I'm like, I need to have it.
Gee.
So funny enough, my birthday, we went out to Boston Pizza after hockey, and one of the guys that came out, he's like, actually, I work for like a farm that like imports plants all the time, because I wanted to buy one, but you can only buy them in the States, and they'll ship them anywhere in the States, but they won't ship them into Canada because there's too many regulations and stuff. And he's like, well, you know, we get like things that are not supposed to be imported into Canada all the time because we get special regulations and approvals and things like that. He's like, I'll see if we can import them for you. I was like, sick. So,
Dude, let's go.
Yeah, I'm going to create my own Pandora in the back here.
Connections, baby.
Yeah.
Love to see it. Awesome. Well, yeah, mine's definitely not as, brainy as yours, because I'm a simple man. And in the spirit of bringing people together, this is mine, which I'm excited about, and it cracked me up. This was a interview with the convenience store owner in Vancouver.
Okay.
It's Black History Month, Ed. What do you got to tell the people at home?
I fucking love you, black people, man. They are my fucking love, man. I love you, motherfuckers, man. I fucking really love you, assholes.
Do you love black people?
I love black people, man. There's fucking lots of black people, man. I fucking love them, man. They're good people, man. I just fucking love them. There's nothing wrong with fucking black people, man.
Do Black Lives Matter?
Black lives matter, man. Black fucking lives. Every fucking life matter, man. What do you mean by fucking black, man? Every black, single fucking black, white, Chinese, every fucking body, every life fucking matter, man. Black, brown, grey, fucking anything, man. Anything. Anybody who are fucking living, man, has full right to fucking live, man.
Who runs Vancouver?
Obviously, Ed from Langley runs the Vancouver.
Oh my God. I thought he was going to take a breath there, and then I realized, oh no, the video just stopped. He's still going.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was, it cracked me up. Especially the Black Lives Matter question killed me. Yeah. I was like, yep, he's going. He's marching on.
Well, he's the kind of energy we need right now.
Yeah.
Bring people together.
Bring people together, keep the vibes positive, and keep the party going, baby. Love to see it.
Yeah.
There's actually one last thing I wanted to mention before we end off here.
Okay.
So Mayor Nenshi is officially running for
I saw that.
the NDP provincial leadership of Alberta.
I saw that.
His video cracked me up. So the whole goal of his announcement, his video he posted is Premier Danielle Smith and her government are incompetent, don't know what they're doing, and only in it to pick fights with people. That was his whole message. And then, but the way he started the video was saying, my family, we worked hard. They lost everything in the 1980s, and they had to grow to get it all back. And so on and so forth. It goes on to talk about a bunch of the NDP policies and yada yada. I'm like, whatever. And it's very like heavy social policies, and really making sure we really bolster the public system. It was the 1980s piece that cracked me up. I was like, why did your family lose everything in the 80s in the recession? Could you just tell me what happened back then that took their business out? Oh, it was following the first Trudeau era. Got it. Sounds good. So that really, I was just like, well, here we are. You say you got the answer, and you're trying to institute policies that screwed over the country in the first place. And then not only do you want to do those policies, you want to take them to the nth degree. Yeah, no thank you. If I'm living in Calgary, I'm telling you to screw off. If I'm living in Alberta, I'm telling you to screw off, because I have no interest, especially when he came out saying, I'm not here to change the Notley NDP party, but I'm here just to make it different and infuse new energy into it. And it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure that province hates Notley. Already off on a bad note right here, bud.
Yeah, like that was not the message that he wanted to go with. And the thing is, like, Danielle Smith has a good rating right now. Like, people really like her. I think where she lost a little bit of credibility was the whole pushback on renewables. She was like, oh, we need to regulate this in a way that makes sense for Alberta. And that was where I kind of got a little bit lost, was because I was like, okay, like I'm all for regulating things so that we don't just have like runaway industry. Like that sounds what you're supposed to do as a good, responsible government. But then when you actually like see the map overlays of like how the restrictions will actually play into effect of like what is actually going to be able to be used for renewable development. It's like very, very limited. I can't remember the exact stat, but it was significant. And I was like, oh man, like that's not good. So especially where, like I said, like Alberta is like blessed with both petroleum products and the ability to then take geothermal to the next level. Like I said, they literally have hot water spewing out of the mountains. I've swam in it. So like, I think that they have a lot of potential there. And I think that she actually needs to maybe step outside of like the traditional party rhetoric on that and lean into it and be like, no, we're for energy generation in whatever capacity it is. And like, that's kind of the way she should have went. But
Right.
I've just been critiquing PR for politicians all week though.
Yeah.
I mean,
You really have been.
oh, Timmy.
Yeah. Oh man, Timmy baby.
Oh, we're going to do that one really quick.
Let's do it. I got it all here. So those will give the quick run up here. So he essentially wanted to change up I got the article here. Our premier, Tim Houston's hitting some backlash because wine growers in Nova Scotia issued news releases this week saying that they learned in January the Progressive Conservative government is going to broaden a subsidy program to include the bottling industry, even though the bottlers would be allowed to use imported grapes. So kind of creating a bit of an uneven ground with how to compete in the wine industry here in the province. These bottlers can produce product at a lower cost and then be able to sell it at a higher rate. Versus kind of the smaller players here. And so the subsidy being open to them just kind of, it was an equalizer in such a way, but now you're opening it up to people who can kind of produce on a mass scale, kind of screws things up. People were looking into it saying, well, it kind of looks like it just impacts like a handful of companies that you seem to have a connection to. We have a question to ask about that. And that's what led to the video we're about to watch here. Unless you want to say something before we get into it.
No, we want to watch it and I'll talk.
It sounds good.
Okay, we got limited time with you. Sure. What's not clear to me, though, is this subsidy that's now being extended to 2 commercial bottlers about responding to it?
I'm going to stop you. If I can stop you. If you want to ask it, let's stick to the facts.
Premier, I really resent every time you say that. I do my job.
You said it's limited to 2 people.
I do my job with integrity.
Okay.
And I focus on facts, and I resent you suggesting otherwise.
But when you characterize it as it's only available to 2 people, I just want to be clear.
But no one else can do it at the scale of the 2 commercial bottlers.
Why not?
Because they don't have the scale.
Why can't they ramp up? Why can't they?
Premier, just to put a bow on whether or not you have a friendship with this gentleman, you don't consider him a friend?
Look, I love every single Nova Scotian. I won't get into certain naming them. We'll be here for a long time. We don't want to waste time, so I'll be here a long time.
This particular gentleman, is he a friend?
I know him. I know. Are you a friend? I know how about tens of thousands of Nova Scotians, and I consider them all.
I love that they zoom in on his mouth where he's tens of thousands. Like, oh man. So let's critique that for a quick second there. So yes, he extended it. Only 2 bottlers can actually can play in that. I understand where his financial head is at, where he's like, more exports equal good for province, which is honestly the message that we need to be pushing, is that export as much as possible, bring in foreign funds into our provincial coffers, stop taxing the life out of people. And so that's the message he should have ran on, was that like, yes, only 2 bottlers can use it right now, but it opens up the playing field for more bottlers to then be able to access this, for people to ramp up, like he said, to ramp up production, to get to that level where they can actually, be exporting at the same level. And that we need to support local businesses that are doing well. Like, that's the message he should have stuck with. But then he was like, I love all Nova Scotia. And the other thing too is that like, it's just, then it makes me question, like, are you actually just like giving the subsidy to your friends? Because all you could have said was like, when he asked, he's like, so are these friends of yours? He could have been like, I am connected to so many people who are at that kind of level of business because they matter, because they employ so many Nova Scotians. I have to be on a personal name-to-name basis with these companies so that I can make sure that we don't have a situation where businesses in this province are going to fail that are significant. And then the question would have like evaporated. This whole like, I love everyone and I'm on a name-to-name basis with tens of thousands. Like, It was so bad. It was just like, man, how are you a boss? How are you premier? Because I just keep looking at these things going like, I feel like you could have handled this so much differently. And maybe it's different when you're in the moment under the spotlights. I don't know. Maybe I can say that from the comfort of my microphone over here, but it's so bad.
I think you make a good point. Timmy's been posting a couple L's in the media lately.
Yeah.
And I just genuinely, what I'm gathering is that he's getting very flustered. Obviously he's trying to make things happen here in the province. But as you said, if his motives were completely pure, I just feel like he wouldn't be this rattled.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So it is something to call out and kind of think about, what is happening with that? Why I'm not seeing an arm's length here happening with this particular subsidy exception or expansion that we were talking about here. So as you said, it could have been easily cleared up, but he didn't. The fact he went into the scrum without a plan in place, what he was going to say, is very interesting to me.
Yeah. And like he did that too with like talking about Cape Breton, and he was like, oh yeah, there's snow, and they just use the emergency measures, as a way to draw attention to themselves. And it's like, oh
yeah,
that was almost as bad as that other MP talking about like the rest of the world. And like, I just don't know what's happening with these MPs out there. Like, have they all lost touch with reality? Like, I'll give it to you. Like, I'm happy with the way that he's governed our province thus far. But again, like you said, he is posting some L's in the media lately. And like, this is probably number 3, I'd say, because the other one was when he announced the changeover from it used to be My Health, but it's now Your Health NS, the app that they just put out for accessing healthcare. And he's like, yeah, we've got 12,000 Nova Scotians going on it. And he's like, and every single one of them, all 1.1 million by June or July. Maybe it was July.
Yeah, July.
Yeah. No, it was end of June is what he said. So essentially 1st of July.
Gotcha.
But anyway, yeah, end of June. And everybody's like, what the hell? And he's like, right, guys? And he's like looking at the leadership of the health authority, and they're like, no. And then people were asking, they're like, well, how are you going to get the doctors on board? And he's like, when the people of Nova Scotia demand it, they'll get on board. And then what happened? Doctors in Nova Scotia came out and said, absolutely not. This is going to be way too much work on us. We don't have the capacity. Thanks, but no thanks. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's like, Mr. Houston, get your PR person in a room.
Get your messaging straight.
Get it together, man.
This is how you lose, especially from the murmurs we're hearing. If there is an election this summer, this is the type of stuff that he could potentially lose on.
Yeah.
Or at least have a minority through it all. So he needs to get this figured out and get things on straight and get his head on straight. Maybe there's something that's going on in his family that's got him distracted. I don't know. But it's not been good. And he is ego driven. And from my understanding of his background, he comes from a military family. So he's very like to the point, cut and dry, doesn't have a whole lot of time for BS. And I think that's where we're seeing his character come out here.
Yeah. And I honestly think that like people are not going to respond to that.
No.
I mean, it's really, and I guess it's really great when you look at like how that's impacted like the different systems that he's touched, where it's been like, it has been very like militarial, where, you just see it. Like, this is what we're doing, make it happen. I don't care. Like, we're going to make it happen kind of thing. And it's worked. It's worked out well. And I can point to like a million examples in healthcare where it's happened. Like, I'm on a couple projects right now where I'm just like, this is really cool. And I wish I could tell you all about it, but then I'd get fired. But there's really, really, really cool things coming. And I can't wait for it all to be announced so that I can actually talk about it. But yeah, you don't see that. And all you see is like this. And like, dude, get it together.
Figure it out.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Interesting good things going on here in Nova Scotia. I'm actually really glad we decided to do another segment after the wild card. A lot of interesting things happening on the premier level here in the province, or here in the country, I should say. And we'll keep an eye on where things are going, how things transpire from here on out. So, on that note, whatever it is you're doing, whether you be going for a run,
smuggling in a glow-in-the-dark plant,
or doing a 300-pound chest press. Whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are, we love you. We're out. Peace.